Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily update for today, May 19th, 2021. In 2 days, a global health summit will be convened in Rome, Italy, to discuss the question of how to deal with the ongoing pandemic and the danger of future pandemics. The LaRouche Organization has taken an initiative to see that this organization and this summit addresses the actual question that's posed behind this question of global health standards, which is, will we reject the Malthusian policy of using such crises to reduce population? And if so, how can we establish a modern healthcare system in every nation? The great task of real infrastructure, according to a statement put out by the Schiller Institute, is modern healthcare systems in every nation. Now, this is part of the peace through development perspective, which has long been the outlook of the Schiller Institute, as opposed to the British imperial policy, which essentially says there are too many people and the reduction of population should be an urgent concern for governments. And we see that with the Green New Deal. We see that with the Great Reset. We see that with the history of British imperial policy as imposed through such institutions as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and through U.S. military operations with the United Kingdom, with NATO, to carry out regime change coups against countries which reject the austerity demands of the so-called rules-based order. Now, let me give you an example of what's coming out of these people. The oligarchs who are committed to this policy of population reduction. Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England, who is now basically the United Nations coordinator for the global Green New Deal, spoke at a forum on April 22nd on the topic African transition to net zero. And what he said, this is so outrageous, it's hard to believe. He said African nations can get rich by not developing their economies and their resources and their land. They can get rich by selling carbon offsets to Western companies that produce carbon. Now, first of all, there's a bit of irony here. If the goal is to reduce carbon to nothing, why would you allow Western companies to continue to produce carbon by getting these carbon offsets? But more importantly, look at the reality that underlies it. They don't really believe this nonsense about carbon. This is an effort to get a new bubble and a new way of carrying out population reduction in poorer countries. What Carney reported at this meeting is that 90% of the demand for carbon offsets will come from the advanced sector, from wealthy countries which have manufacturing plants and so on. And 90% of the supply, that is of zero carbon, will come from the developing companies. An ideal match. The rich countries pay the poor countries to not put land into cultivation, to not build transportation systems, power systems, to not modernize, to let their populations starve through famine induced by these policies. That's the Malthusian policy. In a new form, how can you make money by reducing your population? Now, this coheres with a report put out by the British journal Lancet, the medical journal, which had a report in 2019 that said that of the 5 billion people who lack modern health care today, they cannot be given access to it. They cannot have modern surgical procedures, anesthesia, diagnostics, because they're harmful to the environment. Now, along with this, you have another article in Lancet saying that it's time for people to make intelligent decisions about food, namely give up meat, give up any of those agricultural products which require mechanization. In other words, starve people. Meat provides protein, which has been essential for the extension of life expectancy in the Western world and worldwide. I'm not talking about fatty burgers, I'm talking about good, healthy, nutritious protein. Now, at the same time this is going on, we see the International Energy Agency, the IEA, joining with the BlackRock compact of bankers who are opposed to any more investment in fossil fuels. The IEA, which has largely been a agency that represents the oil and gas industry, they said there should be no investment in new projects of fossil fuel development, no more coal plants. Coal should be shut down by 2030. No more internal combustion engines in automobiles by 2035. And at the same time, the European Union Green Deal has called for a set-aside of 10% of arable land and forests that will be under no production whatsoever. Forest owners, farmers are protesting this in the European Union, especially in Germany. Under these restrictions, there'll be no paper production in Germany. So you have this picture of the Green New Deal moving into a new phase, a phase of dictatorial demands on the economy, using the power of the printing presses of the central banks to shut off credit to those companies and entrepreneurs who want to produce, and instead create a Green New Deal bubble, including a carbon bubble. This, according to people connected to BlackRock, could have $30 to $50 trillion available to it between central banks and private equity funds that would go into the green bubble. This in order to prevent them from having to go through a bankruptcy reorganization, which is what they should do. The whole financial system is overloaded with worthless paper and debt. Corporate debt, which is unsustainable, which can only be paid off through constant no-interest credit to corporations who then go out and buy stock and use their valuations or their improved valuations from stock to borrow more money, to create more debt, while their production is collapsing. This exemplifies what LaRouche warned about in 1995 with this triple curve function, where monetary aggregates and financial aggregates are going through the roof and the real production is collapsing. So this is what the Green New Deal would represent. This is what is a Malthusian population reduction scheme supported by leading bankers, leading financial institutions, insurance companies, many politicians across the political spectrum in all parties, and is being imposed through governments, through central banks and private banking agencies. Now, in contrast to this, Putin and Xi, the presidents of Russia and China, are going to participate in an online ceremony to launch a large nuclear energy project, an 8,100 megawatt capacity. They're not committed to reducing population. They point to the fact that population needs to increase, which is totally coherent with LaRouche's idea in his book, There Are No Limits to Growth. So I'd urge you to do two things to prepare yourself to fight against this Malthusian onslaught. One, order a copy of The Great Leap Backwards, the report that was put out by Executive Intelligence Review that exposes the fraud of the Green New Deal and the Great Reset, that it's nothing but the establishment of a global bankers' dictatorship to force population reduction on the world. And secondly, go to the schillerinstitute.com website and download the copy of the Global Health Security Requires Medical Infrastructure in Every Country. Major industrial nations must collaborate now. This is a statement that we're circulating to try to shape the discussion at the conference in Rome on May 21st that will take up this question of global health. You can't have global health without having a massive expansion of infrastructure, which includes hospital construction, it includes training of people in medical professions, it includes transportation, and so on. This is the way you solve the problem that we face, which is a breakdown of the system. Add to that LaRouche's 4 laws, which give a blueprint for how you generate credit to the real economy to tackle the problems we really have, which is not enough production, not enough research and development, and not enough commitment to the future development of creative men and women who as children should be inspired by the science of things such as the Mars mission, which is going on from 3 countries right now. So join us in this fight to crush the Malthusian operation, which is now going into high gear with the full support of the government of President Biden in the United States, the European Union, but the opposition of most of the rest of the governments in the world that are committed to economic development. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow.